So I've been playing quite a bit of The Legend of Zelda Tears, the Kingdom. In fact, I actually stopped so I could make this video because I saw a tweet from Gene Park that really got me thinking about some of the conversation around this game and really what the most impressive part about it truly is. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel. Let me take you over here starting with Gene, who did make this tweet saying the image quality and FPS fan discussion is so reductive and boring when it's very clear to developers that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a miracle of engineering and code. Quote tweeting a developer, I believe was working at Naughty Dog and a couple of other well-renowned studios in the past. Just saying, hey, Nintendo, how is this even possible? How did you make this work? I mean, you can read it there. But this really got me thinking about how, yes, there has been a lot of talk around the frame rate, which is 30 at best and tends to fall into the 20s and sometimes even lower than that, especially when Ultra Hand is activated. And I think there's a pretty good reason for that, but the resolution, all these things, isn't necessarily fitting in with the quote-unquote high-end gaming market. And trust me, I would like to see Nintendo introduce new hardware that can take this game, I think, to the next level all the way around. Not just the game, but like the resolution, frame rate, that sort of thing. That's clearly a drawback of the Switch going on for a while and still using technology from 2015 with the Tegra X1. But there is something really interesting going on with this game under the hood. And it is probably the part that is impressing many developers right now. Many of them even talking on Twitter, but others I've talked to, like MVG, for example, talking to him off camera and podcast and all this stuff, just about the game and our experience. He seems genuinely impressed with things like the physics and the interactive world itself. And I know, again, there's a lot of talk around the resolution, frame rate, and stuff, but when you get down to just the game itself functioning and not exploding on release with some of the stuff people are able to do that you would expect to break a game, make it force close or crash down or something, which we've seen from games in general releasing day one and just having that issue when it's kind of in a very set space, right? That's kind of closed off and inbounds, whereas people are just going out of bounds constantly in Tears of the Kingdom. You see basic creations, which now from what's online, this would be considered basic, which is like a semi-truck that someone built and is driving around. There's a lot of creativity clearly going on, but things that have really impressed me include the ability to bring actual engineering into the mix. So this was posted up by Liz on Twitter, and it made me realize just the possibilities of this game feel endless, all of which existing in an open world style game, but using things that they've learned from other rigs and stuff they've developed, they create this death machine. Or this one here where someone managed to create what looks like a mech. I saw a post that is from Gundam or something. It's not that advanced necessarily, but it's kind of the skeletal structure of one of those larger mechs, and yeah, they just kind of drive it around. And that's the biggest thing here is Nintendo and the Zelda team, along with Monolith Soft, who ran heavy support on this game, as they mentioned on their Twitter account, have created, yes, this open world sandbox, but one that I've never seen before on the level of interactivity and physics. This is clearly what took 6 years to create. And yes, they are using the same map as Breath of the Wild, but I think this is one of the reasons that people won't necessarily look at open world style games the same after this title, because it's something I've never seen in an open world. And I've played quite a few open world games, more and more as we've gone along through the generations, because it kind of seems like a lot of developers and publishers feel the need to approach a game with an open world in mind. A lot of times just to make it feel like it's valuable enough from a content standpoint of just doing a lot of things on a checklist. And I do enjoy some of those games. Like I play all the different Far Cry titles, Assassin's Creed here and there, although the most recent one felt very, very bloated. And I enjoyed Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn. But once again, Tears of the Kingdom, I think, has introduced something that I am kind of hoping a lot of the developers and publishers who are going to be making more and more of these open world style games look at and I don't say take notes, but take inspiration from. But the thing I would hope people take away outside of like the structure or the look of Tears of the Kingdom is the underlying part to it when it comes to the engine with physics and interactivity in the open world. Originally with Breath of the Wild, you'd cut down a tree and use it maybe as a very basic bridge, but people got to a position where they were making their own flying machines ahead of Tears of the Kingdom, and now that's something that isn't just possible, it's completely encouraged. And in a recent interview with E.G. Alnuma, talked about how, hey, if you can figure out a shortcut to a puzzle we put in front of you in a shrine, great, do that. And there was at one point where I made a very large bridge, which is probably the biggest thing I've made in Tears of the Kingdom, to get through a dungeon area, we'll say, that got me to like the last lock way ahead of time. I'm supposed to be riding minecarts, we'll say, around, and I end up figuring out ways to attach a couple of them from one floor to the other and completely skip a part, and I had to go back to it to get the last lock, which was probably like the second or third one I was supposed to do. And I feel like I'm constantly scrolling Twitter, finding different ways to, for example, get up into a sky island like this one, where they threw a bunch of sticks up there, they then use recall after it falls back down, and then they jump on the platform that then launches them up into that Sky Island. I was looking for rocks. This person's like playing 4D chess over here. Although I think the Korok abuse has maybe gotten a bit out of hand. It seems like that's a lot of people's, I guess, favorite thing to do now is just take like 8 or 9 rockets, attach them to it, and then send them into orbit like we're seeing here. I haven't done that. That wasn't something that crossed my mind, but hey, it's a sandbox. You can do what you want. And this is probably the reason that Tears of the Kingdom will be relevant for quite some time, as we saw Breath of the Wild continue to evolve with very primitive tools to make some of these different contraptions, whereas now it's just you have everything you need to basically edit the world around you with Ultra Hand and Fuse and all these different things. You can fuse a minecart to your shield and it becomes a skateboard because you can do shield surfing. So a lot of things that I'm just finding I want to try out myself, which has also kept me very engaged in the world. While I have liked the major, we'll say, dungeons, or I'll say Divine Beast 2.0 at times, really, but I have enjoyed those more than I did in Breath of the Wild. I'm also finding myself just consistently seeking out different things to do because there's always something next to the thing you were looking for, if that makes sense. So it's a constant barrage of side quests that feel legitimately rewarding, along with different obstacles that you can overcome in a bunch of different ways. And while we were already expecting Ultra Hand, Recall, Fuse, Ascend, these different abilities, because they were showcased ahead of release, the part that I really wasn't expecting was the extensiveness of the interactivity in the open world, and how really no matter how much people try to break the game with these abilities, the game seems to be able to handle it. But that by far is the most impressive thing I've seen with Tears of the Kingdom, and to be honest, probably why a lot of people see it as a 900p 30 frames per second game at best, and they're still playing it and enjoying it, because at the end of the day, it's a game, and gameplay basically rules over everything. Also, I'd have to imagine that I hope eventually Nintendo has a next system that will get us to maybe 1080p upscale at 60 frames per second. MVG did a very good video on the overclocking of the Switch. Seems like being able to overclock the memory got it to just a 30 frames per second that is very stable, even with Ultra Hand being equipped, which seems to be the major thing that tanks the frame rate. Probably because it starts to really get thrown into the physics-based stuff when you're moving different objects around, fusing them, attaching, all this different stuff. But let me know what you guys think about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and if you've been as blown away as myself and seemingly many others have been when it comes to the physics of the game, along with a lot of the different things you can create. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.